Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Manash. If you're loving what you're hearing on the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, go out and tell 2 friends today. Show them how easy it is to subscribe to the show. Spread the love around. Why keep all this goodness to yourself? On today's show, we're talking about how the addict is resistant to the drug. Have you ever wondered how the hardcore drinker can pound back a 6-pack of beers and not seem to be the least bit intoxicated? And in the meantime, your teetotaling aunt gets silly after half a glass of wine. It's because the addict has become resistant to the drug. On today's show, we're talking about the latest mainline injection of hardcore drugs into the economy. Now, I'm not talking about actual pharmaceuticals. The drug in this case is cash. The European Central Bank announced its most aggressive stimulus package in a while. It consists of interest rate cuts, money printing, quantitative easing, the whole 9 yards. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Interest rates in Europe have already been negative for quite some time. They've been cutting rates for years, and it hasn't worked. Back in 2008, the European Central Bank, their main interest rate was 3.25%. And by the end of 2008, it was clear the global economy was slowing down and the central bank had slashed its rates to just 1%. But they kept going. By 2013, the European Central Bank had reduced its primary interest rate all the way to 0, and by 2014, it took the unprecedented step of cutting rates into negative territory. European rates have been negative now for 5 years, yet Europe's economies are still languishing. The results completely defy prevailing economic wisdom. According to the playbook that nearly all central bankers use, cutting interest rates is supposed to stimulate economic growth. But it's not working. Why? Because another 6-pack of beers won't work for the addict, and another €1 trillion won't work either. So if it's not going to work, why would they do it? After all, these economists have a lot of university degrees. They're pretty smart men and women. If I can see it, then surely they can see it. So why? It doesn't make any sense. Or does it? What if the lower interest rates made the euro less attractive to bond investors than today? We could see a flight of capital from the euro to the US dollar or the Japanese yen. That would cause the price of the euro to fall against the US dollar. And when that happens, the exports from Europe all of a sudden look a lot more competitive. A fall in the price of the euro, which has already fallen about 5% this year, would definitely have a stimulative effect on the European economy. Those Mercedes, Fiats, BMWs, and Porsches would be more attractively priced than ever before. Vacationing in Europe would be less expensive. Perhaps plane loads of Americans will line the cafes in the south of France. But here's the scary part. The U.S. is going to feel like they need to respond to this silly financial arms race. You can bet that with an election looming in Washington, there's going to be tremendous pressure to stimulate the American economy. After all, this White House ran on a platform of economic boom, and to a large extent they've managed to ride the wave of economic expansion and declare victory. But if that economic success story shows signs of weakness, and by the way it is, you can bet that the printing presses in Washington will be warming up for the biggest stimulus package we've ever seen. So, when governments print money, where does it go? Does it get sprinkled from the sky in a uniform layer covering the entire country? Well, since the 2008 financial crisis, much of the money printed by the Federal Reserve was loaned to banks to shore up their reserves. But the Fed printed way more money than the banks needed to satisfy the statutory reserves. So the banks took those excess reserves and loaned them back to the Federal Reserve, and they're now earning a healthy rate of interest on the money that the Fed printed to give to the banks. Seems like a little bit of a racket. And the majority of the growth in the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve in recent years has been of this form of money printed for the sole benefit of the banks. Now, the president is already pushing the Fed to lower interest rates and to weaken the US dollar. We live in a funny world. It's a place where good is bad and bad is good, where weak is strong and strong is weak. And you can bet if the natural market forces, and I say natural in air quotes here, then that brand new Mercedes will probably come with a tariff, in addition to the alloy wheels and a sunroof. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.